The scene opens in a quiet clearing beside a narrow stream, where the earth seems to breathe in stillness and the air hangs heavy with unspoken longing. A young man lies across the smooth stone at the water's edge, his body folded toward the pool as though drawn into it by something deeper than curiosity. His hand stretches downward, almost touching the glass-like surface, yet stopping just before the point of contact, as if he fears that even the slightest disturbance would break the fragile world beneath him. His face hovers inches above his reflection, eyes fixed in a silent trance, mesmerized by the image staring back. A face that is his, yet distant, unreachable, more dream than flesh. The water does not ripple. The landscape seems to hold its breath. It is a moment frozen between self-discovery and self-destruction. Across from him, seated at the base of a tree, a young woman watches in aching stillness. Her body leans forward ever so slightly, as if she hopes to bridge the space between them. Yet something in her posture speaks of resignation. Not a dramatic grief, but a sorrow worn thin, drained of its final strength. Her gaze follows him but never reaches him. Her mouth is closed, yet the silence around her feels like a voice that has been pushed inward, trapped beneath the surface of her skin. The world around them glows in soft warmth. The golden light on the stones, the lush green of the trees, the delicate yellow flowers bending gently toward the water. And yet, beneath that beauty, there is a quiet tension, a sense that something inside this moment is quietly breaking. This is John William Waterhouse's painting Echo and Narcissus, created in 1903. A work born at the very edge of the Victorian world, when the certainty of the age was beginning to dissolve into modern doubt. Waterhouse, an English painter associated with the lingering spirit of the pre-Raphaelites, devoted his art to myth, longing, and psychological introspection. His figures do not simply illustrate ancient stories. They inhabit emotional landscapes. His canvas becomes a field where desire and sorrow unfold as slowly and inexorably as the passing of time itself. In an era captivated by beauty, morality, and symbolism, Waterhouse instead turned toward fragility, obsession, and the haunting loneliness buried within the human heart. The story that underlies this scene is far older than the painting. It comes from classical myth, where Echo, a nymph condemned to repeat only the last words spoken to her, falls in love with Narcissus, the son of a river god. He rejects her, not with cruelty, but with an indifference so complete that it erases her from the world. Slowly, she withdraws from life, fading until all that remains is her voice. A lingering presence without a body, a memory without a form. Narcissus, wandering through the forest, discovers his own reflection in a pool of water and becomes helplessly enthralled. He cannot leave, cannot turn away, cannot imagine a world beyond the face in the water. Like Echo, he wastes away beside that silent pool. Where his body once lay, flowers bloom along the riverbank, drooping softly toward the surface, as if nature itself bends down to mourn the life absorbed by its own reflection. Waterhouse does not portray this story as a dramatic climax. He paints the stillness before the collapse, the intimate pause in which tragedy becomes inevitable. Every element of the composition carries symbolic weight. Narcissus lies draped in red, the color of passion and blood, yet here it feels muted, drained of heat, as though desire has folded in upon itself and grown cold. Echo, wrapped in pale garments, seems almost translucent, already half gone from the world she cannot leave. The flowers at the water's edge lean downward, mirroring the young man's posture. Their bowed forms echo his surrender. The stream winds quietly through the scene, an endless flow of time that moves forward while both figures remain trapped inside a moment that will not release them. And yet, the painting is not only about myth. It is about the interior world of human beings, about the way desire can narrow a person's existence until nothing remains but the reflection of their own longing. Narcissus is not merely vain, he is lost inside himself, unable to look outward, unable to recognize another person's presence. Echo is not simply rejected, she becomes invisible, erased, left to fade in the silent space between perseverance and disappearance. Their tragedy is not built on violence, but on distance, misunderstanding, and the quiet isolation of unreturned emotion. The landscape itself reflects their fate. Beautiful, still, indifferent. When the painting first appeared, many saw it as a poetic, decorative portrayal of classical mythology, in keeping with the romantic tastes of the time. Yet beneath its surface, the work carried a psychological depth that made some viewers uneasy. It did not celebrate beauty. It examined the loneliness that beauty can create. It did not portray love. It revealed the fragility of connection. In a world fascinated by confidence and moral certainty, Waterhouse showed a young man dissolving into his own reflection, and a young woman fading into silence beside him. The canvas became less a romantic fantasy and more a quiet study of emotional disappearance. There is a small, easily overlooked detail in the painting: the hat left lying behind Narcissus on the stone. It is a sign of interruption, a trace of a life paused in mid-motion. He did not kneel there with intention. He simply stopped, caught by the image in the water, and never stood up again. The hat is the mark of a journey abandoned, of a moment from which there will be no return. It is the quiet symbol of a future that has already ended without ever beginning. Echo's presence, meanwhile, lingers like a breath of air that refuses to vanish. She remains close enough to witness his decline, yet forever excluded from the world that consumes him. The painting becomes a reflection of something deeply human: the danger of becoming enclosed within oneself, the vulnerability of loving someone who cannot see you, the sorrow of chasing a desire that leads inward instead of outward. Narcissus is trapped by the illusion of completeness in his own reflection, and Echo becomes the embodiment of longing without recognition. Together, they form a silent dialogue about identity and isolation, about how love can fracture the fragile boundary between self and other, leaving one person lost within themselves and the other erased by absence. In the years since its creation, the world has changed in ways Waterhouse could never have imagined. Yet the emotional truth of the painting has only grown sharper. Today, Narcissus feels less like a mythic figure and more like a familiar symbol. A person trapped in self-image, reflection, performance, perception. The pool no longer belongs only to the forest stream. It belongs to every place where identity becomes a mirror one cannot escape. Echo becomes the unheard voice, the one who watches, waits, and fades in the shadow of someone else's self-absorption. Their story becomes not a distant legend, but a quiet psychological reality. Waterhouse renders all of this with restraint. The tragedy unfolds not through action, but through stillness, through the gentle slope of a shoulder, the downward bend of a flower, the silent tension suspended over the water's surface. The painting never cries out. It whispers. It lingers. It allows the viewer to step into the stillness and feel the weight of two lives slowly slipping away in different directions, one into silence, the other into himself. And so the painting leaves us with a haunting reflection, not of myth alone, but of human existence. It asks what happens when a person becomes trapped in their own reflection, when inward desire replaces outward connection, when longing becomes a closed loop from which there is no escape. It asks what remains of the people who stand just beyond that mirror, whose voices grow faint, whose presence fades, whose lives slowly dissolve into quiet observation. The water remains still. The flowers lean toward the stream. Echo sits in silence. Narcissus bends ever closer to the image beneath the surface. And long after the scene has passed, the world continues to carry their story, a reminder that some forms of destruction do not erupt with force, but unfold softly, beautifully, and tragically in the quiet spaces where the human heart turns inward and forgets to return.